Hey babe, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm full. We just got through eating a big old steak dinner, and I'm full and ready to kind of relax for the night. What about you?
Same. Just got in from a from a girls' weekend, so I drove pretty much all, but felt like all day, and then you had dinner ready for me when I got home, and now we're just about to do this podcast and then chill the rest of the night and watch TV until it's bedtime.
You. So I think for our little small talk tonight, before we get into it, I think we're just going to talk a little bit about um, what's been going on the past couple weeks. We've been MIA on the podcast front, but uh, it's really just because of our cat sneezing. It's really just been, we've just been swamped. I've been swamped at work, been swamped with the holidays, and then you had a week or two where you were super sick, which you never get sick.
Oh no, it was awful. I hate it. I hope I never get sick again.
Usually when you're sick, you're just kind of muddled through it, but this one, you were like in the bed like for 4 or 5 days in a row.
I was for 3 solid days. I was pretty much went from bed to couch, and that took everything I had in me. And then I had the fever, which I haven't had fever probably since I was a kid. That was awful. But you took really good care of me, and I'm very proud of you.
Aw.
Usually you leave me alone when I get that way, but I mean, y'all, there were times I didn't eat for like 3 days, and there were times that I couldn't get off the couch, so he had to bring me like water and Tylenol and cough syrup, and I still have a lot of the coughing. So you'll hear me kind of clearing my throat and trying to fight off cough while we're doing this podcast, probably.
Well, that's where we've been the past couple of weeks, but today I want to go ahead and get back into our story where we left off of our history story. We were just got married, and then I think we did an episode on Christmas, and then we did an episode on like Caleb's birthday. So we've kind of veered from that. So I want to get back into that, but that's what we'll talk about after the break.
Welcome to Loving Our 25 to Life. I'm Heather.
And I'm Bo. Together we've been married over 25 years.
Yeah, baby!
And this is where we talk about life, love, and all the adventures we have had along the way.
Oh, wow.
Whether we're sharing stories from our marriage or taking you along one of our trips, we're here to reflect on how we've made it this far and where we are headed next.
So grab a seat, settle in, and let's dive into another episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. All right, so last we left off, we had kind of talked about the actual wedding itself, the chaos of the day, the beauty of the day, the fact that it was, 4-hour long ceremony.
It was not 4 hours.
Just kidding.
You're a little dramatic.
But I do want to go kind of past that and talk about just how we perceived marriage after we first, just the first year of marriage, first 2 years of marriage, which, by the way, we have dogs all in the room, so they're going to be dropping stuff on the floor and shaking off and all that kind of stuff. So just ignore that in the background. But I want to talk about just our first part of life, and hopefully this is a timely conversation because I know we have 2 kids that have just gotten married this year. And, I think, some people that have told us that they listen to the episodes, they're relatively newlyweds, a couple years, 4 or 5 years. And so I would just like for us to talk about how the first year or two kind of went for us.
I think the first year, which fortunately we kind of grew up together, so we didn't have to really go through that whole learning a lot about each other. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we knew about each other, but we had not lived together before we got married. So there was that learning. We spent a lot of time together. We hung out a lot together, but we had not actually lived together. So that was kind of exciting for me to be able to sleep with my best friend and all the things. But shortly after we got married, in fact, 3 months almost to the day after we got married, my dad passed away.
Right.
And so that was a pretty pretty traumatic thing for me because, I mean, he had been sick, but they said he was doing better. So it was kind of unexpected, but not 100% unexpected. So, I mean, right off the bat, we're dealing with that. And then shortly after that is when Mama died. Bo's grandmother died a couple of months after that. And so he was pretty close to her, and that was kind of a thing. So, I mean, just right off the bat, the first year, we had those things going on. Plus, you had started a new job as a youth minister.
Right.
I had started a new job at the Baptist building. So we were both getting acclimated to that and our new house and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was a pretty busy and interesting first year.
What do you think the hardest thing to adjust to was when we first got married and started living together?
Just learning, like, I don't want to say our roles, because I really feel like we've done a good job throughout our marriage of, we don't have assigned roles. We have things that one of us likes to do better than the other. So, you know, it hasn't always been this way, but you love to cook. So about, 10 years or so ago, you took over the cooking. And, but I think the thing I remember vividly is you were going to do the checkbook or whatever. And I was fine with that. And then I came in one day and your mom was balancing our checkbook, and we'd been married probably about 6 or 8 months. And I was like, what are you doing? And I didn't know this, but your mom had been balancing our checkbook with you, like, for the whole time we'd been married. And I was like, no, we need to do our money and whatever. So then we started kind of doing it together. And then, I don't know, at some point, and we still kind of do it together, but I do all the balancing and the paying the bills and things like that. But that's just because I don't want to stress you out with how much money we don't have.
You don't want to stress me out with how many Amazon
No, that is not true. I have gotten
place.
much better. So shh.
Just kidding.
I even look.
Kind of.
I need an award because I have passed Buc-ee's twice in the last 3
That's
days
true.
and
That
have
is
not
true.
stopped to buy one thing.
That is true.
So I'm getting better. Thank you.
I'm
You want to talk about your bourbon collection?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
We can talk about my bourbon collection. I have probably 200 bottles, and maybe 150 of those were given to me.
Given to you by the store after you handed them some money.
Hey, either way, call it what you want. So looking back at, we were in our younger 20s when we got married. Do you think we were prepared for what was ahead in the next, I guess ultimately 26 years, but do you think we were prepared for what was ahead of us in the next 2 or 3 years?
So the way I feel like we were raised was we were just taking the next step. Like, you go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you
Right.
graduate, you get married, you graduate, you have kids. So we were going through the steps of life. That was Maisie. But we were going through the steps of life. And I remember there was a period of time well into our marriage that I wished we had waited a little bit longer to start having kids. But now I'm glad we had them when we had them because we had Bethany. We'd been married about 1.5 years when we had Bethany.
Right.
And then 2 years later, Caleb came. But I think now, like, we're 40, I'm 48, you're 50, and they're grown and gone. And Joshua is almost out of high school. So we're at that stage in our life where we can go and do and enjoy things without being, I don't want to say tied down by little kids, but I do have friends my age that are just kind of starting out, or they have elementary school kids or whatever. And I'm like, well, I think that goes one way or the other. You either enjoy the first half of your life getting to know each other without kids, and then you have kids and you have kids until, like, if you have a kid our age now, you're going to be 68 or 70 when they graduate from high school. Or you do like we did and you have them early on, and we didn't get to do a lot of anything when
Right.
we first got married because we didn't have any money, and then we had all these kids. So I don't know if that was what you were asking, but that's where I went with it.
Going back to what you said about, we leaving high school, and we did the high school thing, the college thing, the get married thing. And I'm not going to say it was a generational thing or like a 90s thing, but for sure, like the way we were raised, I guess in the South, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But like, I always grew up knowing I wanted to be a husband and dad. Like, I could care less what my career was going to be. I just always knew I was going to be a husband and dad. So that was where my focus was coming out of like high school and college is not necessarily, we have friends that, their story is I really focused on my career and got my career where it was going. And that's why, they're our age and they're just now getting settled with kids and stuff because they focused on their career. And to me, and I do love what I do for a living, and I think I carefully crafted my career path, but I did it simultaneously. I do get envious sometimes of like friends of mine that like got to spend their whole 20s, partying or doing whatever, just traveling. And I, we didn't, like you said, we didn't do any of that. We were married with kids, but I do feel like now the trade-off is we get to do that stuff in our later years. And so I do feel like we appreciate it a little bit more, or I know I do. I appreciate the times that I get to travel, the times that I get to just focus on other aspects of my life. So for us, that came later, versus earlier.
I think too, though, one thing that we did well, and I'm glad that we did this well, is I remember growing up, I would always hear, don't lose yourself and your kids, keep dating your spouse, because one day it's just going to be you and your spouse. And if you don't stay connected, then when your kids are grown and gone, you're going to look at each other and be like, who's that person sitting across the table from me?
Right.
And I think we did a really good job of staying connected. And I mean, now that the older two live in a different state and the youngest one never wants anything to do with us, we do have fun together. Like we go, even just trips to the grocery store, we go and have fun. And we've gone to distilleries together, and we go on little weekend getaways together. And we're not that couple that sometimes we do our own thing. Like I said, I just got back from a girls' weekend, and you go and do your thing in Knoxville sometimes. But so we can spend time apart without being so clingy to each other.
That thing I go and do in Knoxville is called work.
Yeah, that's what you say, but you have the time of your life when you're over there. But anyway, I just think that we've done a good job of staying connected, and we also still do a good job of giving each other space so that we don't smother each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think one thing that helps us, and I'm not saying we did it the right way, and I'm not saying if people that didn't do it our way did it the wrong way, but one of the things that I think is important for us is that we established ourselves early on, through our 20s, through our 30s. And so we didn't meet each other, fall in love, and get married when we were already set in our ways. I joke around with you all the time and say, if something ever happens to you, I'm not getting remarried because I'm literally set in my ways. And like, I like the way I do things. I like the way we do things. And I think once that's gone, that I'm not going to be able to get it back or get it in some other form. So like, this is it, I think. So I just think that, for us, it happened the way it needed to happen. The older I get, the more set in my ways I am. So I know that's probably a bad thing for any kind of future anything that I could have with anybody else. Other than like the financial episode that we had, what are some other struggles that you think that we faced early on that we kind of powered through and maybe made our marriage a little bit better?
I think for us, our hardest part of marriage came in 2015, whatever year of marriage that was, 16-ish, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. When I've since learned we were in what's called survival mode. We were in survival mode in that our jobs were important because we had to pay the mortgage, and we were living paycheck to paycheck because, we didn't have a nest egg or anything when the kids were little, and we learned some really expensive financial mistakes in our first 10 years of marriage. And so we were just surviving. Like, we were going to work and coming home and doing all the kid things and whatever they were involved in, and then the homework and whatever. And you were addicted to your video games at the time, and I was addicted to, I don't know, working out, going to the gym, doing whatever. So it was just really a hard time, I feel like. And then I just one day was like, I've had enough. And I think I told you this. I said, if this is what marriage is like, I don't want to do it anymore. And we sat down and talked about all of it. And that's when we started going to counseling together, which I'm a huge fan of counseling. I know I've been in counseling off and on my whole life, depending on what's going on in my life. But a lot of Christians will tell you that you don't need counseling because you've got the Lord and you've got Jesus. And I get that. And I think that your faith is important. But I also think that seeking help is important when you're going through things that overwhelm you and don't, or, like in our case, we just needed an objective opinion to help us work some things out. And I honestly think that the time we were with Emily, who was our therapist at the time, saved our marriage. And, there have been times since then that I've been in therapy by myself with things, and just, it gives you clarity. Sometimes just saying things out loud gives you clarity, and helps you see things. And that's in addition to the studying your Bible and praying and all that. But I used to get so frustrated when people would say, you don't need counseling if you're a Christian because you've got the Lord. And that's true, but I think they can go hand in hand.
Right, right. Also think too, one of the biggest lessons that we learned during that time, or at least I did, and I'm sure you did too, but there was a point in time where you and I sat down and you even said to me, like, I'll give you an out. If you want, you can leave, you can, go, I'll take the kids, I'll take whatever, you can just be done with it. And I had no idea what you were talking about. You were like, you just seem like you're unhappy here. You would rather be doing anything other than spending time with us. And I did get in that loop of, going to work, coming home, fixing supper. We ate supper, then I was either doing other work or I was getting on my video games. And when you said that, to me, it was like, what are you talking about? I don't dislike our life. I don't dislike our, marriage. I don't dislike our family. What are you talking about? And then it took like just stepping back for me and reevaluating kind of my actions. And it's like, even though I didn't think that, I guess the fact that I had all this other stuff taking over my attention, that's kind of what it seemed like. And maybe on a subconscious level, it was like that. But, I really had no idea that was, but you were like, if you want to take off, go, like no hard feelings or whatever.
And we weren't the best communicators at that time. Like
Right.
we were both what they call stuffers. And so we would stuff and stuff and stuff and keep things in until like we just couldn't anymore. And then we would okay, if you want to go, go. If we had been talking about things and I
Right.
had been telling you things that had been bothering me up to that point, it wouldn't have gotten to that point.
But I think one of the things, I really don't mean this to sound like I'm patting myself on the back or anything like that, but in a lot of things, I don't feel like I have like that male pride issue. So when you brought that to our attention, I didn't feel like, oh, you're just crazy. You're just, you're imagining things. It was like, okay, what do I need to do to fix it? That's not what I meant for that to be at all. So let's get this fixed because that's not my intent. And so one of the things I would love to issue to any guy out there is don't let that pride get in the way. Just anytime that you're one unit, but you're two people. So if, your wife or for females too, if your husband comes to you and says there's an issue, don't let that pride get in the way. Just sit down and kind of go through it, because it would have been so easy for us to just say, oh yeah, you're right, it's time to make a change. And I do feel like marriage is something worth fighting for. And I do feel like, but in saying that, it is a lot of effort. It's not, we didn't get to 26 years by going to Disneyland every year. It was not a walk in the park. It's very hard. And, I can just remember being a kid thinking like, we don't need to make money. We can live off love and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, that's not the case. But with work, dedication, and commitment, it is worth it.
I think also, like, I do hear that marriage is hard and it's work and all the things, and it is, but I think if it's work all the time and you're not enjoying each other and you're not enjoying life and you're miserable because you can't stand to be around your spouse, or you are always getting annoyed with your spouse, then I really feel like that is the point where you need to get into some kind of counseling, because I just see some of our couple friends that, like, for example, I've worked with people before that never have a positive thing to say at all about their spouse. And I think part of our therapy back in 2015 was that we vowed never to talk negatively about each other to anybody, whether you were present or not. And I don't do that. Like this weekend, I was telling Stacy and Bethany and Miss Reba how awesome you were, taking care of me. And I think a lot of couples don't. They just get in the cultural habit of, my husband is an idiot, or he, can't find the ketchup to save his life, or what, and that takes a toll. And so I just feel like if couples would focus more on speaking positively about each other, even when they're not around each other, does that make sense? Like, if you're always finding yourself saying negative things about your spouse, you need to reevaluate what the deal is with that. I think a lot of that came from when we read that Love and Respect book together, because
Right.
it talks about, which, by the way, that's an amazing book. It's called Love and Respect by, I can't pronounce the guy's name. It starts with an E, but it just talks about how women desire to feel loved and men desire to feel respected. And when one of those is missing, then the circle gets broken and you get on this repeat cycle. And it's just really a good book, but it gives perspective to things like, the story that he tells in that book that I still remember to this day is when he would get out of the shower, he would drop his towel on the floor and forget about it. Well, she would come in every morning and pick it up and get mad because she assumed he was just doing it to be a lazy butthole, and he wasn't. He was just forgetting about it. And so she was taking it personally. And so finally they had this big blow up fight, and talked it out and realized that, sometimes, like, when you do things that you don't realize you're doing that annoy me, I can say, hey, do you even realize you're doing this? And you'll be like, no. And we fix it instead of just sitting over in the corner stewing because you don't love me or you would pick up your towel. And that's kind of how ridiculous some of their fights had gotten. But it's just a really good book about how to communicate and how to respect each other when you communicate. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. So yeah, I think, and somebody had given us a copy of that book or told us about it years ago, and you read the book, and it took me till probably 2015 or 16 to read the book. But once I did, I saw a lot of that and how a lot of that applied to our lives as well.
It's definitely a book that is easier if y'all read it together, because, you can do your part, but if they're not willing to do their part, it just kind of, the circle just never stops. I think that wraps it all about it. But I think for us, like, as far as the things I appreciate the most about you is just the support you give me when, like, for example, I've changed jobs a lot. I've stayed in nursing, but I've done different things like ER and then ICU and then education. And anytime I've come home to you and said, this department is getting ridiculous, I can't do this anymore, I got to find something else, you've always been, okay, what do you think you want to do? It was never, you never made me feel like a little person by not wanting to do the job that I was doing, and
Depending on how you look at it, we're either good for each other or bad for each other. But I feel like we're usually on the same page as far as big life issues. Like, we were both on the same page when it was time to move from Mississippi to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And then when I wanted to move to Kentucky, you got on board with that, and it might have been a rougher transition for you and the people we live with for a little while, but I feel like I mean, we've talked recently, and I feel like, you would say like I do. I think this is where we need to be right now. And so I think we're either good for each other or bad for each other in that we usually seem to be on the same page when it comes to like just the excitement of changing life and doing something different. And there are people that lived their entire life, 25 miles from where they were born, and I wasn't built that way. I'm not like that, and I don't think you are either. And so I think that's kind of what makes life interesting for us, and
For sure.
that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's it. I mean, that's kind of going over the first couple years of marriage, even up through today, and a little bit about kind of how life was for us.
But I want to say one last thing and then we can close. I need you to start telling me no more because this is why we have so many dang animals, because I will find
true.
a dog or a cat or something online and I'll be like, oh, look at this animal. And Bo's like, oh, well, if you want it, we can go get it. And I'm like, no, I need you to tell me no, which is also, I love you to death, but you are the most awful accountability partner with me wanting to lose weight and exercise, because I'll be like, all right, babe, start next week. I'm going to go to the gym every day and we're going to eat healthy. And you're like, okay. And I called you on the way home from work the other day and I said, you were like, hey, do you want me to meet you at the gym? I said, well, I don't know. Do you feel like going? And you were like, I don't know. Do you? And I said, not really. I had a rough day. And you're like, well, just come home and we'll watch TV. And I was like, no, you're supposed to say, get your butt to the gym. I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. But
Well, part of that is because I don't want to get my butt to the gym.
I mean, in that way, we have to work on being able to tell each other no sometimes, because we do. Like, he's like, hey, can I have this $500 bottle of bourbon and we'll have $501 in our checking account? I'm like, sure, babe, you deserve it. You go get that.
I've never bought a $500
You have not. No, I
bottle.
will say that. He does not spend that much money on bourbon. And not because I won't let him, but because he just won't.
I'm fiscally responsible. Just kidding. I'm
Sorry. I think I peed myself laughing at that one.
not. All right. Well, that's it. So hopefully, maybe it was just worth us rambling through our first couple of years and stuff that we learned in our years of marriage. But
If you did get something out of it, we would love for you to comment or
Yeah.
message us, or if you have our personal phone numbers, feel free to text us. It really encourages us and helps us. And hopefully, if y'all need to reach out for any help, we would love to talk to you or whatever.
so next week we will talk about navigating the first couple of years of marriage with kids and what kind of an issue that was. And
Well, I gotta go in here and feed all these animals you let me have. So we'll talk to y'all next week and we'll discuss all the children.
all right, love you, babe.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found something to take with you on your own journey.
Remember, love is an adventure. Sometimes it's wild, sometimes it's calm, but it's always worth it.
Yes!
If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who might need a little inspiration.
And don't forget to follow along for more episodes and vlogs documenting our travels, life lessons, and hopefully plenty of laughs.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep loving life because it is the greatest adventure of all. Bye for now.
Bye.